Stand Up for Grain Safety presents Grain Engulfment Rescue.
Grain engulfments are something that happen in the United States anywhere from 30 to 40 times on the average. I'm pretty sure that's a number that is roughly half of the total engulfments that really happen because they happen on the family farm. Somebody gets pulled out and nobody ever knows.
Bin entry is a last resort, but when necessary, following recognized safe bin entry procedures will significantly decrease the risks of injury or death. If bin entry must occur, use the following best practices. Use a bin entry permit or bin entry checklist each and every time prior to bin entry to ensure hazards have been identified and reduced. Lock out and tag out energy sources to all equipment. Check the atmosphere as needed. Use a lifeline when engulfment hazards exist. Most importantly, never enter alone. Always have an observer present in case something goes wrong. These simple steps will prevent the majority of injuries and deaths associated with grain bin entry.
As a rescuer coming into the scene, we would get on the scene. One of the first things we would do is once again lock out and tag out any of the equipment that can make the grain move. Then the next thing we would do on the outside of the bin before anybody would make entry, we would take air quality monitor and we would monitor the air quality inside the bin before we enter. Once we've established lockout, tag out, established our air quality, then we would also do a visual on the inside of the bin and look at our condition of our grain. If it's in good quality or good color and all that, doesn't have any foul odors, we know we're in a good place. If the grain is discolored and all that, and usually that's when engulfments and that happen, is when the grain is out of condition. So what we're doing is we're actually looking at the angle, what they call angle of repose, is how the grain is unloading. And it all depends on that angle as to how we would enter the bin. After entry has been made, we would make contact with the patient. We would then determine their level of consciousness and try to determine what position they are in, whether they are standing vertically in the grain, they could be sitting, or they could have an arm or a leg out to the side, things like that. So once we got two rescuers into there, we would start, what we would do is to put this rescue tube. The rescue comes in 4 or 6 components. There are different methods, but the deal is we're going to build a circle around the patient and totally take the grain away from him and take the pressure off of his body. People have actually suffocated in bins in this position with their head above the surface because of the pressure on their lungs. So the tube actually helps us to take that pressure away from them. So the first section that I would take would go in front of his face, because our first concern is to get the pressure off of his chest. And then it's basically a matter of attaching and putting the sections together. Once we get it to this position, then we basically just start sinking it into the grain. The goal is to sink this tube as deep as we need to in order to get him out. And that can take, once we get down below their knees and that, sometimes they can get themselves out. So what we'll do is next, we'll use our auger, one of the tools that we would have. And what this does is goes inside the tube, between him and the tube, using this drill. What we do then, basically what this does is augering down, and we start augering the grain out from inside. So basically now the rescue process is just a combination of working with the auger to pull the grain out and working the tube down into the grain to establish his freedom. Once we get the patient and that below, uncovered below the waist, we would then put some kind of a device on him of a harness and whatever, attach a rope to him, and that way we have control of him all the way down to the ground.
For more information on Stand Up for Grain Safety, visit www.standupevents.org.